You're listening to Procurement 6, the weekly podcast from the team at Art of Procurement that summarizes this week in procurement in just 6 short segments.
Hi there, my name's Philip Heitzen and today is Friday, November 22nd, 2024.
6.
Services spend management isn't one size fits all. While some tactics can be applied across all types of spend and services, for the most part, services spend requires a unique approach and a strategy that's distinctive from other spend areas. Now, to help us all better understand how organizations are approaching services spend management, we're conducting our annual Services Spend Management Survey. And for that, we need your input. Now, the survey is linked in today's show notes, so please just take a few minutes to answer questions on how your team or company is managing their services spend. As always, your survey answers are anonymous, and we'll share the results and key takeaways if you choose to leave your email address after the survey closes, but that's not a requisite for actually completing the survey. So again, the link to complete the survey is in the show notes of today's episode.
5.
In this week's episode of Art of Procurement podcast, I had the chance to sit down in person with procurement leader and longtime friend of AOP, Gordon Donovan, while we were at SAP Spend Connect in Las Vegas last month. Now, we spoke about a wide range of issues impacting procurement today, and in this short clip, Gordon shares how procurement can identify the weakest link in their supply chains so they can protect the business from risk.
Supply chains may have a single point of failure. Mm-hmm. When you start mapping various things back and it comes back to a supply, we could start with different suppliers here, but if it keeps on coming back to the same problem, well then actually the relationship is like 5 steps down in the supply chain is the single point of failure. Irrelevant of where my starting position is, everyone's getting something from here. So whilst I may not want to go direct, I need to have a relationship with that organization, potentially individual, that kind of sits down there as being the bottleneck. And we know this from productivity planning in terms of machines. That's one of the things that you do, don't you? You organize the production facility to the point where you spread the time. I can't, for the life of me, the name of this has just gone out of my head, but you spread the time across it so that you understand that actually my single point of failure or my single weakest point is here. So I need to break that process up from a process. It's no different. Yeah, it's a process. You need to get better visibility to be able to do that, because if you care about, I was talking that when you have real big disruption and there's pricing volatility, it's really hard to do cost down programs. And I know we talk about procurement being broader than that, but cost is risk.
To listen to our whole conversation, go to artofprocurement.com/podcast or search for Art of Procurement and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts.
4.
This year, perhaps more than ever, we saw the power of the podcast on display in full force in our culture, in politics, and in business. As one Wall Street Journal article put it recently, a new media landscape has emerged, and in 2024, the podcast has been crowned its king. Now, in a recent episode of the Sourcing Hero podcast, Kelly Barner spoke with Chris Lance, the Vice President and General Manager at Una, about how and why podcasts have now emerged as one of, if not the, most dominant media channels today. Obviously, podcasts played a larger than ever role in the US presidential election, but this trend towards the podcast as a preferred medium has also been a long time coming. Kelly and Chris talk about the advantages that a podcast offers over traditional media and how organizations can take advantage of podcasts to get their message out to the right audiences. Chris, who has himself appeared on many podcast episodes in recent years, will also share his tips on how to be a successful podcast guest if you find yourself in the hot seat anytime soon. To listen to the full episode with Chris on the Sourcing Hero podcast, click on the link in today's show notes.
This is Procurement 6 from Art of Procurement. To get notified every time an episode is published, go to artofprocurement.com/subscribe. 3.
Supplier relationships and data are like gold mines full of valuable insights just waiting for procurement to use. But too often, procurement loses sight of the strategic value that's essentially hiding in plain sight, right in their supplier documents, and they get stuck relying on outdated or manual processes that make it impossible to tap into this opportunity. To explore how procurement can take a data-first approach to managing supplier relationships and agreements, we partnered with the team at Simply Contract on a new white paper. In the paper, we lay out how procurement can set up the processes and technology they need to start extracting meaningful data from the vast amounts of information they have in their supplier agreements. Once procurement makes the mindset shift from thinking of supplier documents as an end in and of themselves, and instead recognizes them as highly valuable strategic assets that can significantly improve decision making, they can tap into the opportunity that's right at their fingertips. You can download the copy of the paper using the link in today's show notes.
2.
In a bit of supply chain news, grocery distributor United Natural Foods Inc., or UNFI, has found itself in the headlines this month, and so far the news is not good. Now, UNFI is one of the most prominent distributors in the natural food industry, and now they're under legal fire with a class action lawsuit filed by natural foods producer NYSM Organics. The lawsuit essentially claims that UNFI imposes unfair and often crippling costs on natural food suppliers, many of whom end up owing UNFI money. The suit alleges that UNFI then refused to pay supplier invoices until they bring their account back into good standing. Those suppliers say if they challenge any of the deductions, which most of them can't because it's too time-consuming and expensive for all but the biggest suppliers to push back on UNFI, then they run the risk of being put on UNFI's list of non-preferred vendors. The impact, complainants say, can be financially devastating, especially for small companies and startups who often have no other choice because UNFI is their only distribution option to get their products into key natural food retailers like Whole Foods or Sprouts. UNFI plays a large role in the natural foods industry, and for many smaller suppliers, they aren't just distributors, they're the gatekeepers holding the keys to market entry. The outsized role they play here and the impact that they have on suppliers makes these recent allegations all the more troubling. Now, to read more about the lawsuit against UNFI, check out a recent article in Supply Chain Dive, and we're going to link to that in today's show notes.
1.
If you missed Mastermind Live 2024, which is one of our biggest virtual procurement events of the year, then don't worry, it's now fully available on demand. Each year at Mastermind Live, we invite procurement leaders from around the world and across industries to discuss some of the most pressing issues and challenges that are facing our community. This year, we hosted 6 interactive sessions that helps procurement navigate the increasingly complex business landscape, from emerging operating models to innovative sourcing approaches, and from macroeconomic pressures to custom-fit tech roadmaps. Mastermind Live gives procurement a blueprint for success in 2025 and beyond. Click on the link in today's show notes to listen to all of these episodes on demand.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next Friday at 6 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time. If you've enjoyed this pod, help us grow and tell your peers to search for Procurement 6 wherever they get their podcasts.